Okay, we're at 6 o'clock. Chair Mayhood, it's up to you if you would like to start or wait a few minutes. We have 7 people in attendance at the moment.
So 7 is a quorum, right?
7 is a quorum, yes.
Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and get started and hope people trail in. Let's call this April 28th meeting of the Santa Margarita Groundwater Association. And can we have a roll call vote, please? Roll call. Not a vote, just the roll call.
Director Engford?
Here.
Director Koenig?
Here.
Director McPherson? Don't have him yet. Director Cassidy?
Here.
Director Koopman?
Here.
Director Pollock is missing with notice, absent with notice. Director Dillis?
Here.
Director Stiles is not here yet. Director Perry?
Here.
Director Ackerman?
I made it here.
Yes.
Hey,
In person, first
And
time.
Chair Mayhood.
Here.
In the room together.
Thank you. Let's do quickly the alternates. Director Baskin? Director Brown? I do see Director Hutchison here, but she is alternate, non-voting today. Director Hayes, do not see him. Director Lind. I don't have Director Lind. Director Eckwell.
Here.
And Director Eckwell is non-voting participant, and Director Smalley, I do see Director Smalley here, and he's also non-voting participant.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm gonna go quickly back, Chair Mayhood, we do have a Director McPherson, almost here, 2 more steps. Yes, do we have Director McPherson?
How are you doing?
Great.
Yes, we
Glad you
do.
could make it.
Just went to the old chamber event over there in Scotts Valley, friendly Scotts Valley.
Okay, we're good to
Okay.
go. Thank you.
All right. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There's none from staff.
Okay. All right. Well, this is the part in the meeting where we have oral communications from members of the public on matters that are within the purview of our organization but are not on the agenda tonight. Are there any comments by members of the public?
Anybody who's joining us remotely, please indicate using the raise hand on Zoom, or if you're calling in, it's Nick, help me start.
I don't see any. The people that are phoning in, they can just hit #9 and so they have a way. Okay, so I don't see any requests to make an oral communication before us tonight.
Request.
Pardon?
Hey.
Do we have
Bruce?
a member of the board who would like to say something on matters not on agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, Jeff.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the right place to raise this, but in my neighborhood recently, there's been a large number of, out of the 10 homes, 4 of them have run out of water, and one's already drilled a well. And in 2015, we didn't have this problem. And there's actually almost 40 inches of rain. So we had kind of an unusual situation going on where the water seems to be running out. Interestingly, our hill is the same hill that at the southern end of it, San Lorenzo Valley Water District is pumping out of the Santa Margarita also. And they're pumping heavily out of that this time around because of the CZU fire and that whole disaster that happened. So I'm curious if there's, part of the agenda of this board is to make sure that the water levels overall don't fall, but also that they don't locally fall in one particular area. And I was wondering what kind of data we had about is it possible that these people in this area are getting impacted by lower levels. And we don't have a lot of data that I know of, but what data is there? I'd be curious to know if we had anything or could look into that possibility.
I think, Jeff, that's something that probably should be agendized. I think trying to discuss that at any length tonight might be awkward, and it's kind of catching Rick off guard in terms of coming up with any information. So, I mean, it definitely is within the purview of what we do. So I guess what I would, well, I'll let Rick answer and then I'll follow up. Go ahead, Rick.
I didn't
Can I
mean for it to
interrupt?
become- I didn't mean for it to become something this tonight. I meant for it to maybe go in the future.
Raise your hand, please.
Oh, I'm raising my hand, but all communications usually are not responded to.
Right.
You just
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying, Jeff, you're perfectly right to raise it, but the best way to do it is to, if you want discussion of it, is to agendize it. And so the way to do that is just to send a formal request to me as the president, and then I will go ahead and make sure it appears on the next agenda, if it's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? And Rick, did you want to say anything?
I would just say for Jeff to contact me, because we have not been pumping those wells. We've still been on surface water. We're just making the change now. So contact me and I can give you some, information of what we are doing right now. And we can chat.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good thing. Jeff, why don't you contact Rick? And if there's still something that you want to discuss, then go ahead and just send a formal request to agendize it. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to our consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes and our never-ending Brown Act requirements for remote meetings. Is there anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda to discuss it? I don't see any hands up. And I guess I should also ask if any of the members of the public want to discuss anything that's on the consent agenda.
Seems to be no hands.
Okay, all right. Then I think it is our custom here to vote on the consent agenda, right? So can I get somebody to move the consent
I
agenda?
move the consent agenda.
Okay,
Director Cassidy?
I thought I was present at that. Is that?
I'm sorry. What?
There's a comment made about maybe the minutes not reflecting that.
Okay, if you want to change the minutes, then you need to ask to have them removed from the
Never
consent
mind.
agenda.
You know,
I will check that. I will check that.
I think you're right.
Okay. So we had a motion from Director Cassidy, and just for the record, we have Director Stiles just joining us, 6:08.
And I apologize, I had a family emergency.
That's okay. Let's get a second and move on this. I hate having a motion hanging it like it makes my
I'll second that
Robert
motion.
Rules of Order like tinglies are going on.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
okay. Let's have a vote on this, please.
Okay, so it's a roll call vote. Engstrom,
Aye.
Koenig,
Aye.
McPherson,
Abstain.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Goodman,
Aye.
Dillis,
Aye.
Stiles, Director Stiles, we're voting on the consent agenda.
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayhood.
Aye.
Passes with 9 votes and 1 abstain.
Okay. All right. So next we have going on to our first item of serious business here is the surface water monitoring contract. And Brett, you want to lead off on this?
I would like to turn it over to Sarah. She has been in the past coordinating that work, and I think she's more suited to give a quick staff report, if you don't mind,
Go
Sarah.
Take
Sure.
it away.
Sure. And is Chelsea here?
Chelsea is here, yeah.
Okay, great. So in the past, the county has actually overseen the contract for the required surface water monitoring that we've done as part of our SIGMA. First is our data collection and to help us develop the plan, and then as implementation of our monitoring network over the last couple of years. I've kind of decided that the county's role for overseeing contracts, now that we're working towards the planning and administrative services role, that the county doesn't need to be managing contracts that are really the role of the agencies directly, now that we're going to have some staff support to help with that. So this year, rather than the county overseeing this contract, we're requesting that the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency take over the administration of the contract for surface water monitoring. Balance Hydrologics was selected through a competitive process when we chose the technical provider for this agency, Montgomery and Associates. They were in partnership with them and helped us develop the monitoring plan, and over the last year has been doing the installation of the stream flow and stream flow gauges, the ratings curves, and the monitoring of those. So we asked for this year for them to, because there was still one that needed to be deployed, one stream gauge that had to be deployed this last year. We wanted to have them help us with 1 year of monitoring the whole network, to make sure that the network is working, that the stream gauges are giving us what we expected them to. And then our plan is next year to do a 3-year competitive bid for a new 3-year contract to take over the surface water monitoring for kind of the next period of time. But for now, we're recommending just having Balance continue the work that they have been doing. They had been doing it through a county contract, but now recommending that the groundwater agency take that over. Any questions on that? And we do have Chelsea Neal is available if you have any questions about anything that was in the proposed contract.
Jack.
Yes, one question about the rates. There's a schedule in here talking about the hourly rates for different kinds of folks that would work on this, on the monitoring. And there's a rate schedule for 21, 22. So I was wondering about 22, 23, if it's the same rates or different, or if there's going to be an inflationary factor, or could you explain that?
That's a good question. Chelsea?
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to see you all. So that's our current rate schedule. Our fiscal year also starts in June, which is when, our company goes through the process of deciding whether or not to increase our rates or not. And I don't currently have an answer for you on that, because that decision has not been made. For a 1-year contract, there are, we could also set it up to make sure that these rates stay as the current rates for the next year. And that's something that we could do if that would be more agreeable to the board, since I don't have an answer on how those might change here in the near future.
Yeah, I guess I would say that given that we'll be voting on this tonight, we would be voting on this amount of the contract. So as far as we're concerned, this is the contract. So whether the rates change for you guys or not, as far as we're concerned, the amount that's listed is a contract. And I think it has to be that way. We can't vote on something that's open-ended.
Yeah, and that's how we set up all of our contracts, Gail. You're absolutely right. So like, even if our rates change, we still have to stay within the same budget amount. So yeah.
Any other questions among members of the board? I noticed that Mark Smalley, who's an alternate, but he can ask a question, right? But I'll go to Doug first.
I believe, Gail, in the past, we have said that the alternates cannot participate at all. We've kind of been pretty sticklers about that.
It seems
Or
kind of
no,
odd
private
because
well owners, it's
that's giving up their rights as citizens, which strikes me as a little strange. But I think I know what Mark wants to ask, so I will ask it for him. But go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Gail. I have a couple of questions. One's probably for staff, the other's probably for Chelsea. I'll start with Chelsea. Noting that the imputed monthly amounts differ during fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. The first couple of months are roughly $5,000 a month, and then the next 4 months are roughly $10,000 a month. Curious why there's the variance there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It has to do with so in the first part of the year, up through October, we go out and collect data. So we make routine visits, take measurements, work up that data. But then at the very end, once we have the entire record of collected data, that's when we have to go in and actually do the data workup and create the final hydrographs. And that part's pretty labor intensive and takes a substantial amount of time. So at the very beginning here, we're only going to be doing the data collection, 1 round of GDE monitoring. And then at the very end of the project is when we do all of that data workup and analysis.
All right, and I'll presume that staff doesn't need to have sort of a monthly billing estimate scheduled.
We're fine.
Okay. The second question I had, and again, this is probably for staff, noting that we're doing this in a non-competitive way, are there any concerns with respect to our purchasing guidelines as an agency?
We do have a piggybacking clause in our procurement policy. So since that was originally competitively bid, we're good with that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from other members of the board? If not, I'll ask Mark Smalley's question, which I know is that he was wondering why it takes 2 people to do the stream monitoring. And actually what I noticed is it takes 4 people, because in addition to the 2 folks that are actually presumably standing in the water and getting wet, there are higher level people involved as well.
I think they have to hold hands to keep them from washing away. Someone has to be on the bank.
That's kind of what I assumed, but I'd like to hear Kara give a more formal explanation.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, no, I understand where your question's coming from on the schedule, and it's not actually that there's 2 people going out. It's that we have people in our Santa Cruz office. The people who are going to be doing the data collection are actually at different staff levels, and so I just try to break it up, assuming on a given day it might be 1 person or a different person going out and doing the data collection or the data workup. So just to account for the fact that we have staff at varying levels. There's only 1 person that goes out and does the data collection on a given day. And then the principal and senior principal, they provide oversight and data review. So once that data is fully worked up, we have our own internal review process that it needs to be reviewed by someone at a higher level. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that does, at least to my satisfaction. Any other questions from the board before I go out to members of the public? Don't see any. Are there any questions by members of the public?
Anybody joined late? I see somebody there.
Whoop, somebody had their hand up briefly.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Maximilio.
Yeah, Max Busnardo. Oh, I just wanted you all to know I'm here. I don't have a question about the balance proposal. I actually know balance very well from my professional work. I would just say they're an excellent groundwater hydrology company in general. I just wanted you to know I'm here because, and I showed up a little late, but if there was a chance for an agenda item related to running out of water in my neighborhood, I would like to share that.
I think you missed Jeff Koopman's mention of that, and it has been noted. Jeff will talk to Rick Rogers, and then I said that Jeff, based on whether he, after that discussion, he could formally request an agenda item, and if he does, then I will place it on the next agenda.
Oh, great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions from the public? Then if not, we need a decision from the board. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding this? It's listed right on your agenda. You can read it. Doug, were you volunteering?
A quick point of order, the room's actually accidentally been muted. You could unmute, please. That's on me.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
this is Doug. I'll move the staff recommendation with the amendment that Balance commit to a rate lock based on the rates that are in the proposal here for the duration of this short agreement.
I would second that.
Okay, any discussion of the motion? I guess I would just like to add that that we're approving the contract in the amount of $57,495.40. If you don't mind me just adding that to the record.
And it's not to exceed, so it can be less.
It's a time and materials agreement not to exceed with a contingency. I understand.
Great. All right.
You ready for the roll call?
Yes, we are.
Langford,
Aye.
Koenig,
Aye.
McPherson,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Koopman,
Aye.
Dillis,
Aye.
Stiles,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Ackerman,
Yes.
and Mayhew.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. All right. So next week, our item is the budget for the fiscal year 2023, and it's the draft. Am I understanding this correctly, Paret, that we're not actually voting on anything tonight regarding this, or in terms of we're not adopting it, we're just discussing it?
That is correct. This is just to receive input, get any questions, and it will come back to the board either in May or June for final approval.
Okay. All right. Take it away.
Open that up. This is different this time because when we get to the revenue portion, it is not following the same formula that we this agency has been since its inception in 2017. So we will get to that, but I'll cover the expense side first. It is not insignificant. I'm going to say that. You see that especially in comparison with.
Excuse me, Paret, did you want to share your screen on this?
I'm just following the staff report. I don't have a special presentation.
All right.
The agenda report. So maybe if I go back to what page, it might help you. Let me just do that.
While she's doing that, can anyone see a video from me? I can't.
Excuse me?
Are you seeing video from me?
No.
No, me neither.
Let's see, maybe you're still, because you joined late, are you on the the outside attendee?
Could you check if Ruth is maybe by any
Yeah,
chance?
Ruth is still
You're
among the
You're
attendees.
attendee, Ruth.
Okay.
Oh,
I probably am too, because I have my video.
Yeah, Nick, if you could move over Director Ackerman and Stiles, please, to panelists.
On it, one moment.
So we are on page 3.2-3 agenda packet. So the lower table is the expenses, and the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget is considerably more than this year. But then if you look at the prior years, the total budgets have been as high as the proposed one. The biggest difference is administrative and planning services. In the past, this agency has been getting somewhat of a free ride because of the collaborative staffing method. And that means that the member agency staff, County, San Lorenzo Valley Water District and Scotts Valley Water District have been contributing quite a bit of staff time without charging this agency. So in the future, none of those agencies have capacity to provide those services. And as you remember, that whole committee that was formed earlier this year proposed to this board, and you agreed to go out to an RFP to obtain those services from a third party. Third parties do not work for free, so that's why it would be nice. We are hoping that at least some of those costs could be recouped from a grant that is slated, the planner, not the true administrative. No grants cover operating costs. So the two administrative, not, but the planner services, we are hoping to recoup some of that. So the 227, that's why it's so much higher than prior years. There are three major categories in that. Administrative staff, planner, that makes up about half, actually more, 2/3 of that is a planner. And a little bit money for youth outreach intern. This is a amount that this board already has approved for Kelly Krotkoff to continue doing the excellent job she is. When that money runs out, the last time you approved was $7,500. And if that runs out, the board can decide if you want to continue. But that's a relatively small part of that, only $6,500 slated for next year. Treasurer stays the same. It's to be seen if any of the treasurer services could be done by the third party. It's a very specific role. It has stipulations in a government code, what treasurer has to do. It isn't appointed by this board, and Nick Kearns currently is doing it. So it maybe could be a little bit less, but there will be activities that the third party cannot take on. Grant administration, again, if we have a grant, it will continue. If we don't get a grant, that will not occur. So those are the big ones in administrative. The next one, looking what is there that is worth. Technical services, 155,000. There is annual report that we have to be doing every year. That money is 45,000 based on Scotts Valley Water District has been doing those reports for years and years and years. So a pretty good sense of what it takes to get those done. And the other line item is what you just heard from Balance Hydrologics. We have 55,000 for the full year. And it is kind of the 55 matches kind of the amount what you have in the contract, although part of this contract will be in fiscal year 2023, but then next spring we will have similar one carrying over. So we're thinking about the same amount for the full year. But if we go out to RFP, we'll see what that actually comes. And then we have a little bit for data management system, other professional services, and model evaluation and implementation. That adds up to that 155. General administrative expenses, pretty straightforward. They're pretty much tracking with prior years. And the last one, the capital outlay, 650,000. It's a carryover from this year. We were hoping, you see, this year in the budget, we had 710. We were hoping to get maybe all of this done, or at least encumbered. It did not happen. We are at the tail end of finishing up the design and getting bid documents ready to go and solicit for the construction. The construction is going to happen by and large next year. So it's essentially reappropriating those funds from this year. The 650 is also fully grant funded. So that's why when you now go up to the revenue piece, the first table, it might be a little confusing there. We are not taking the 1.1 million and divvying it up between the agencies that are contributing. So it's the 1.117 minus what we are expecting to get from the grant. And so that's actually 660,000. That's a balance of the existing grant. So the rest of it is 467,000. And that is now shared between the 5 agencies. And that formula came to the board, I think maybe 2 meetings ago. And the board directed staff to use the new formula where Scotts Valley picks up 47%, San Lorenzo picks up 32%, County 13%, Mount Herman little under 3%, and City of Santa Cruz 5%. So those are the numbers there. And that is my report.
Okay, thank you, Perrette. Are there any questions from members of the board or comments?
I don't have Ruth and Jamie, sorry.
We get to mow this?
Nick, were you able to?
We were there for a moment.
Well, let's see, I still see, actually, I don't see, I see.
Jamie.
Oh, maybe we have to have the Zoom up on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still see Jamie Ackerman among the attendees, and she
Right.
should
That
be-
is one of those things. They have to accept the promotion.
Accept it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We have now, Amy.
Well, anyway, Ruth, if you had something you wanted to say, go ahead and pipe up now.
No, I don't have anything to say right now.
Okay, all right. I didn't want you to feel silenced. Okay, any other questions or comments from members of the board? Okay. How about from members of the public that are in the audience?
For hands or sound 9 if you're on the phone.
I don't see any.
And just for your information, Chair Mayhood, we do have 2 public, well, we have 1 public member in the room in addition to Director Eckwell. But no, there's no hands here. In the
Okay,
room.
all right. Okay, well, I guess that means that we're all, you've got grudging acceptance, I'm guessing, that we're gonna have to spend more money, but there it is, okay. Then if there are no more comments, then we'll go on to the next thing, since there's no action item on that particular one. The next is administrative and planning services, the scope and budget. And who's reporting on that?
I'm thinking I'm gonna ask Sarah to speak for that as a representative of the county.
All right.
And we do have, and Tim Carson is here in the room if any questions are later.
Yeah, and I might ask him to speak more specifically, but I'm going to start with just the background about how we got to today. The ad hoc committee met several times over the past 6 months talking about what it was that we are needing in terms of staff support for a number of things, including the administration of this agency and really understanding that we need the additional support of someone who can help us with planning needs to be able to move this agency forward in a number of different aspects. So the agreement with the ad hoc committee was to partner with the Santa Cruz Mid-County Groundwater Agency and do a joint RFP to try to create the kind of economy of scale that you see in some of the other larger groundwater agencies. Both of our groundwater agencies are just orders of magnitude smaller in terms of both the number of people served and the amount of water pumped than most of the rest of the GSAs in the state. So really, we're kind of at a disadvantage trying to produce the same outcomes as some of these other agencies. So by pooling our resources a little bit, we think that we're going to have a better outcome. So we worked together on developing an RFP. The county is the only member agency of both groundwater sustainability agencies, is the administrative lead on the RFP and will be the lead on the contract. We only received, we had 2 different vendors attend our pre-bid meeting, so we thought we might actually end up with 2 proposals, but in the end, we ultimately only got 1, which was from the Regional Water Management Foundation. We then had a subcommittee who was tasked with doing the selection, and given that there was only 1, it was more of a review to make sure that the proposal met the needs of the agencies and kind of satisfied all of the requirements that we were looking for. Perrette and I both had to recuse ourselves from that. But we did have member representatives from both groundwater sustainability agencies take part in that selection. And ultimately and this was done through the county's general services department, was kind of the administrative staff overseeing this. The proposal received a score of 93 out of 100 from the selection committee on average. So it appeared that everybody was happy with it. The ad hoc committee, of this board then met last week to discuss it, and there were no significant red flags kind of brought up. So we're now bringing it to you as a board to hear if you had any other concerns or any other thoughts that we need to bring into the negotiations before we move forward. The timeline I'm working on right now is to have this brought, finish up negotiations in the next week or 2, bring this to the County Board of Supervisors at the June 7th Board of Supervisors meeting, and have the contract start on July 1st. So we're on track for that timeline at the moment. And basically, I just wanted to open it up to hear if there's any questions or concerns. And then we have Tim Carson here. I don't know if you could just ask if you're interested in having him give like an overview of what they proposed. He can do that. And then if you have any specific questions directed towards the proposal, he can respond to them. And if it's about the process, then those would be directed to me. Okay.
I'm going to assume that all of the board members are good board members and have read everything, so we don't need a presentation from Tim, but I'm glad he's here to answer specific questions from members of the board. So are there any comments or questions from members of the board?
Or the committee that, and I looked at that.
That's true. Yeah, several of the members of the board were part of the selection committee, so I know.
That's true. And or if I'd invite staff too that were part of that committee, because they probably discussed it at length. Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, I have a couple of questions about rates. And there are two different schedules in here with rates. Let's see, one is under item 7, cost proposal. And the next is 2 pages later about schedule fees and expenses. And so I noticed on the first one, cost proposal, which I think is 3.3-18 page, it has an hourly rate, for program director, senior planner, admin staff. It looks like it's just maybe an average rate or something. And I get that, just sort of but if I look at that and then try and relate that to the schedule on 2 pages later, where it gives ranges of hourly rates, like program director would be between 130 and 160, for instance. Is that because there might be different people filling it? Is that what that's about?
Yes, that's correct. So what we tried to do in here was to give a rate for the first year and then show the potential rate range for the positions over the life of the 3 years. And because we have not filled the senior planner position yet, and that will be subject both to hiring and salary negotiations on the foundations end, we wanted to include a range on that. We're also bringing in additional administrative support. And so similar approach on that, where we'll be in negotiation during that hiring process. And that rate, the second rate table there, I believe within the RFP, they requested that we provide rates over the duration of the contract. And that's why you see the range there.
And then I noticed on the first schedule, again, on the cost proposal, it talks the fact that labor costs could increase between 2% and 6%, depending on market conditions and economic factors. So I was trying to understand what that would be. Economic factors might be if it costs more for what inflation goes up or whatnot. But what are market conditions? Is that it's hard if it takes more money to hire somebody like a senior planner? Is that what that means?
I think the overall intent of that was to recognize that we're in this potential inflationary period and that the rates will adjust. Typically, they're adjusted as a cost of living, but in addition to that, there may be additional increases in, say, healthcare costs or benefit-related costs that actually factor into the hourly rate that's charged per year. And so the estimated rate on that is somewhere in the 2 to 6%. And the overall cost, if you look at year 1 versus year 2 and year 3, that increase overall is at 4%, which is the midpoint of that potential increase in the 2 to 6% range.
Okay, so that's what's in the numbers, but it could be more or less if I read this right, depending on.
Correct. It could be more or less, and it will reflect its time and materials based contract. So if it requires less time to get the task done, then the agencies are only paying for the hours worked specific to their agency.
And my last question, I think, is do these staff, do they work, I'll call them staff, do they work on different projects and not just this one, or will there be folks dedicated just to this project?
The staff here will be, the senior planner will be dedicated specifically to this project. The 2 administrative staff, the current staff person who supports the Mid-County Groundwater Agency is 3/4 time, and her principal responsibility is working with the MGA and actually doing some of the grant administrative support for the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency. Whether or not the second person who is added for the administrative support is full-time on these projects depends on if they're coming in a part-time position or a full-time position. And so that, I think, is going to depend upon the fit of the person that we bring in. And what we have found is actually some of the, sometimes the position is more appealing to a person who doesn't want to work full-time. And so we're more interested in bringing somebody in who we feel is a good fit than adhering to whether it's part-time or full-time. We have the flexibility to accommodate.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from members of the board or staff? Doug.
Yeah, I was a member of both the ad hoc committee and the evaluation group, so I thought I'd just add a little color. And Tim may have to plug his ears for some of it. My scoring was, within the error bars of the average scoring, so I don't think there's much point in going through the details there. But I would offer, with respect to the questions and the implications of the questions Jack was asking, that I did do some referencing, and the independent referencing reinforced that the agency operates with good discipline internally, that they don't seem to pad the bills. The feeling of the customers was that the bills accurately reflected the work that was done. And mindful that the bid came in a little higher than we were hoping, that gave the ad hoc committee some comfort that if we can be disciplined as an agency in terms of how we interact with the contractor, then we can probably guide that budget in the direction we'd like to see it, maybe keep it a little bit more under control. I guess that's what I'd have to say.
Okay. Did you want to respond to that, Tim? You don't have to.
No.
Okay, Chris?
And I'm assuming, Tim, when you say the planner will be working full-time on the project, you mean both agencies?
I do.
Okay.
I will go ahead and ask one question for myself and one for Mark Smalley. I think when we originally talked about this, we thought that the planner would be kind of the person that really spent a lot of their effort, 100% time. And I was a little bit surprised when I saw that there was 50% time for the, head person, yourself, Tim. I think that when we talked about this earlier, that the sense was that person would just be kind of overall to make sure that the grants were handled correctly. And so could you explain how that ended up at 50%?
Sure, yeah. So that total is really based upon the experience to date in working with the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. And so what I have found is that in order for the agency to function, I think, smoothly in the way that the member agencies expect, and for the level of coordination amongst the partners to be occurring, there really is, it's critical that you have the participation of somebody at that senior staff level who has a sense of how the bigger picture pieces of this puzzle fit together and is able to facilitate that coordination amongst all of the agency partners. Our experience during the development of the GSP for the Mid-County was that was a task unto itself for the senior planner, in addition to support from Montgomery and Associates and the other consultants that supported the plan development. And that really was essentially a full-time task. And so the role that I have been playing, and in fact, in the senior planner worked for the foundation from 2016 to 2020. And her position ended essentially with the completion of the plan. Since that time, if I looked at the percent of time that I had been spending solely for the MGA support, and it was in the 1/3 to 40% FTE time. And so the rationale in developing the halftime is that there's actually some reduction in the amount of time that I'm spending, that somebody at that senior level is spending in terms of working with the agencies, because some of that coordination is going to be happening through the course of what the senior planner is doing. But nevertheless, I would still contend and feel strongly that it's essential that there is somebody who is core to the relationships with the executive team members or the member agency representatives, and really working closely with them, in addition to the time that's required to provide oversight for both the senior planner as well as the 2 administrative staff positions. So collectively, that's how I got to that 50% time. And I think one of the open questions, both for the senior planner as well as for my time, is ultimately what is that split going to look like between the 2 agencies? On paper, it's 50-50, but I think in reality, it's going to be somewhat better understood over the course of as the work proceeds, really what the demands are from each of the agencies. And we have the benefit in some regards of them being on slightly different schedules in terms of the GSP reporting. But I think that both agencies have a lot to do in terms of projects and management actions as laid out in the GSPs. And so it will be really up to the member agency executive staff and the board working closely with the foundation to make sure that split of time is meeting the needs of both agencies. And maybe over time it's reassessed, but I think that's the starting point, that's the starting assumption that we're working off of, is that it's an even split between the agencies.
Okay, thank you. And then in the proposal, there is the assumption that the staff would be helping out or coordinating 4 to 6 meetings per year for each of the organizations. And so far we're kind of on a monthly schedule. I don't know if, maybe Perrette, if you want to comment on whether you think that might change, or the problem with going to anything, every 2 months is that sometimes, things have to get approved. And so I guess what I'm worried about is that we haven't budgeted for as many meetings as we might need.
I think that is maybe along the lines what Director Anker was alluding to. If we're disciplined, most of the things with good planning can wait 2 months. There's always things that come up. There's some also allowance in our policies, ratification of contracts versus no, we must see it. And also the day-to-day back and forth with the third party. If we can, we will save money. It's sometimes saving money is not the most important thing. Sometimes getting things done is more important. So this board really needs to do some soul searching. Mid-County, I think right after they submitted their plan, did they go to quarterlies right away?
That's correct. We used to meet more frequently during the plan development, but once the GSP plan was done, we've been on quarterly meeting schedule since then.
So I think it's doable. It's just a matter of how well we plan and what our priorities are. Doug has a hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Just building on that or amplifying briefly, since I have been attending some of the mid-county meetings as an alternate, they aren't marathons either. You know, they're doing quarterlies and they're getting through the meetings in an hour and a half, 2 hours max. So it's not like it's a wind wave each time.
That's good to hear. Okay. Any other comments by members of the board? I don't see any, so let's go out and see if there's any comments by members of the public.
Looking for hands or star 9?
I don't see any here. Okay, and am I correct that do we need to adopt this now or what?
Now it's coming back to us as a revenue agreement with county. And we just wanted, because at that point, it's too late to really ask for any changes.
Yeah.
So you will be approving the revenue agreement that is about half of that total contract.
Okay.
In the future meetings. Nothing, no action required today.
Okay, so if there's no more comments from members of the board, or then we will go on to the next item, which is proposed project activities and near-term GSP implementation approach. I think that's it's a nounization, makes it hard to understand, but go ahead.
I think this is going to be a tag team effort. I'm going to kick it off, and then Rick, I'm not sure if it's you or Carly from San Lorenzo, is going to add your perspective, and then I'm not sure if it's Rosemary or some of her staff who brings in the Santa Cruz. I'm going to get it started. I do not have a presentation, so kind of trying to find the page that you can follow along.
3.41.
Okay, 3.41. And the table there.
That's 3.43.
I'm moving slow here.
Or page 51 in the 75 document. It's easier
Okay.
to find it that way.
So this is a wonderful colored table, and it kind of builds on what we brought to you, what the staff brought to you last time, that we have to get going on implementing the GSP, the PMAs in the GSP projects and management actions. Picking, how do we pick? We had maybe 4 pages of those. And then what we thought might be a fair approach is the agencies, the member agencies, and also Santa Cruz, because they do, they have indicated that there are projects they would like to at least explore further. So we brought that into that each of them, the major partner agencies, picks a project, and it gets at least one project or more, depending on how big, extensive it is. And then we add it to this table as a proposed set of activities that will be further analyzed, explored, studied, and hopefully these are the activities we can also then include in the grant application in the fall. So this is what the table, how those projects became to be. I'm gonna start, and then why to put them in a table is gonna look for synergies. If there's a study, similar studies, so on top you see the column headings, those are the types of studies. So we are looking for if there's 2 or more projects that need to be doing similar study, it might be a cost-effective way to combine it into one and go out and do it together. Also looking for potential conflicts, and the mid-process checkpoint is we felt that at that point, we would like to really look at everything that has happened to the left of that and see how are those puzzle pieces fitting to support this basin and our goals. So hopefully we can kind of keep adding more information here and keep all of this moving by partner agencies, but have ways. And the orange mid-process checkpoint is not the first time or the only time that this board gets to review the work that has been done. This could happen as frequently as when a major step gets done, but we felt this is truly that not all of the projects are going to move forward from that. We don't anticipate that the 7, I believe, are listed there, are all fitting into past the exploration into implementation. So I'm gonna go start with the one that is listed with Scotts Valley leading. It is in the middle of the page of the table, Group 2, Tier 3, purified wastewater recharge in Scotts Valley area of the basin. So this is something that we have spent many years on. When I started here as a GM, now close to 10 years ago, it was already something the board had looked into. They have been very much in support of supplemental supply project, and recycled water is the only other supply in addition to groundwater that we have any stake in the ground. We're happy to partner with the other agencies in their project, but this is one that we felt we can lead. So we have done preliminary studies. We have done 2 in my tenure here, maybe even some higher level before that, but the rest of it, the gray, light green boxes, cells there, those are other investigative activities that still need to happen before we can determine if this is something that will work for this basin at all. And so that's kind of where, and because we have our feasibility showed that using only local wastewater is not going to be, it's going to be very expensive per acre foot. And it will not satisfy the need of Scotts Valley Water District in terms of the amount of supplemental supply, nor it's going to really make a significant contribution towards restoring the basin. Therefore, we have expanded it, and the regional approach is what we are thinking will be more valuable. That's why Santa Cruz is listed there alongside with us, because they are then the next, the only really partner we can work with, not necessarily the water department, but even the public works, because they have the big wastewater treatment facility that produces more water, more source water, and they have currently agreements to use. They have agreement with SoCal Creek Water District, but even beyond that, they have excess recycled water. So that's kind of the 710 to 1,500 acre feet per year. Those are kind of brackets. 710 was based on if we would have, if we would utilize the stage 2 of pure water SoCal. They are currently in constructing their project, and that project is expandable, that treatment facility. So the 710 is based on that. 1,500 is beyond it to tap into more. And when we get further along, we might model those two or something in between. So that's kind of where Scotts Valley is thinking we would like to contribute in the PMAs. Right, and should we, Chair Mayhew, should we take questions along the way or have all of the agencies present first and then come back to questions?
I think have brief presentations by all of them and then come back.
Okay, so I'm.
And unless people have like just a quick, point of clarification, go ahead, and raise your hand, but otherwise for discussion, let's wait.
Oh, I don't see hands. I don't see.
Okay, then let's move on.
So, Rick, would you like to go next?
I do believe Carly's going to jump on and kick it off.
Okay, let's move Carly there. Nick Wallace, if you could move Carly over to panelist.
One moment.
And Carly, you need to accept that promotion.
I actually do not see her in the roster.
I don't either.
I see her face on the screen.
Maybe she's already part of the, let's see.
Yeah, she's one of the,
Carly?
I see Carly H. O'Cara.
No, Cara. We have Cara. We don't have Carly. I don't see Carly.
No, sorry.
Should we go to maybe Santa Cruz and then?
Go ahead and- Yeah, and we'll circle back to Carly, or if she's not here, then
I'll kick it off. Give her another minute, or you want to start up with Santa Cruz?
yeah.
We had Rosemary hand up. Rosemary, you should be able to talk. Did you want?
Can we go to the county first, I think? Should we do that first and then we can?
We can do Rose. Let me just check with Rosemary if it's gonna be her or Heidi down the road. Rosemary?
I'm happy to give an overview, and then Heidi may want to weigh in with some responses to questions if there are some.
Okay, so let's do Sarah then next, and then I'll move Rosemary over to panelists.
So the county is not leading any large projects. What we are proposing to work towards, and this is really through kind of a parallel process, is working with private well owners and trying to encourage and somehow hopefully incentivize water conservation and site-specific stormwater management. And so it's not something that we've been able to find grant funding that would help us. The state's been unwilling to put money in towards anything related to rebates. We've recently tried through our emergency drought funding, but stormwater specific management for private well owners is something that the Resource Conservation District has worked on in other areas, particularly in Pajaro, and that's something that we are looking into potentially partnering with them to try to develop kind of a regional approach to encouraging property owners to do more site-specific recharge on their properties. And then regarding water conservation, we're trying to find ways to incentivize that. And this is, again, through our SB 552 process. We're hoping to come up with maybe some better mechanisms, but I don't have much more to present on those at the moment.
All right. Okay. All right, go. Let's see, I don't see Carly hasn't shown up. So go ahead, Rosemary.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to mention that the city's item on this list is an aquifer storage and recovery project. There's quite a bit of overlap between this work and the work that Pratt was describing relative to the injection. It's sort of the basin has to get used as a storage place, right? And so there's a lot of common blocks you'll see in the light green there, for example, of the kind of work that needs to be done. The the direction on the aquifer storage and recovery comes from the Water Supply Advisory Committee work that happened between 2014 and 2015, where a citizen panel made up of 14 representatives of diverse interests in the community met for a year and a half, spending quite a bit of time, and looked at all kinds of supply alternatives and prioritized those in saying, if we can take advantage of available surface water in the winter time to build additional drought supply for our system, that would be their top priority, recognizing that the other options that exist here for us, since we like all of you are not connected to any resources outside of the county, is either a recycled water project or a desalination project. So this is a sort of range of things. And I think that it's really useful for us to be proposing this project in this mix, because it kind of brings us one of everything, if you will. Some surface water, and I know San Lorenzo has some options that relate to that too. Some looking at opportunities for aquifer storage or groundwater storage with either recycled water and or surface water available in the wintertime. And it's just a way for us to kind of keep the options open for all of us to accomplish what we want to accomplish, which is basin sustainability, and then also for Santa Cruz, very clearly drought storage. We don't see it as a one or the other outcome for us. We see it as we need to be able to operate either in the Mid-County Basin or in the Santa Margarita in a way that contributes both to achieving our drought storage goals, but also basin sustainability. With that, I think I can pass this on.
Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, I think you're up, Rick.
I have Harley now too. I see her in the panelists.
Yeah.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yay. Okay, hi.
Yeah, sorry, I was on the phone. I'd called in with the phone number. I was trying to raise my hand, but I don't know if it went through, but I was able to join here. So our main priority would be our expanded conjunctive use project. So we did finish the conjunctive planning document, or the conjunctive use planning document, in 2021. And now we're looking to go through a CEQA analysis with an EIR that would look into permitting the emergency interties, changing a place of use in Felton, so submitting a water rights change petition, looking into Loch Lomond's allotment with the city of Santa Cruz, as well as the CDFW and NIMS link stream bed alteration agreement for our diversion permitting. We'd also like to complete a feasibility and construction engineering study for the Loch Lomond allotment. And that is, we've started the process with the EIR, but are looking for additional funding or help to get through that process. It is pretty expensive. So we'd like to see this pulled into our priority projects and potentially enter into the grant application as well.
Okay. All right. Any other presentations from anybody, or should we go to questions and discussion?
I'm going to add, I did not mention in the bottom of the table is the two, the two component, one project, two components is listed there. It's the one for that we applied and received a notification from DWR that we are, they awarded us this grant, the drought relief grant. Very recent news. We don't have an agreement yet. We are working on that, but it's very promising. So it's the intertie and the new production well. And why they are listed here is there is a notion that any project that happens in a medium or high priority basin should be at least brought to the respective GSA awareness and make sure that it does not impact the basin negatively. But I think those both projects have more to offer. to this suite of projects above, because almost every single one of them needs water moved between major partners. And this intertie could be used for the conjunctive use that Carly was just talking about, for accessing low chlorine water. If it's chosen in the future to receive treated water instead of raw water, it can be conveying the surface water for aquifer storage and recovery project. And it can convey not the purified water here, but if we're talking about larger volume of purified wastewater stored in this basin, it needs to be then pumped out and provided as a water supply to somebody else. And Santa Cruz is probably one of the recipients, so it could convey that water back. So it has, and considering it's 100% grant, it will reduce any of those projects when implemented by this amount that our ratepayers don't have to pay for. So I think we wanted to make sure it's listed here as a contributor, again, a puzzle piece to any of those. But they will not be, we are not, there's down the color coding, the greens. So it's a different grant and it is grant funded, but it is not competing for the funding from the to be coming GSP grant in the future. But I think that's all we wanted to present, kind of get feedback from the board and public. And if it's positive, then staff continues working, meeting and starting to move. And one thing that was not mentioned, the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency is not currently anticipating to be funding, because even if we get a grant, it's not very likely going to be 100%. So we do need a cost share, and it is not intended to come from Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency. It is intended that those sponsor agencies will be funding the match portion or have agreements someplace else to get that funding. So turn it back to you, Chair Mayhood.
Any questions or comments from members of the board? Well, I have one question. Is I just noticed that all the Group 2 Tier 1 things, which largely have to do with San Lorenzo Valley, none of them are light green, and I'm just wondering why. And I don't know who should answer that, Rick or Carly or somebody, but why would these not be potentially funded by a grant? For example, the upcoming grant that we're applying for in autumn.
I think it's, do they need those activities that are the column headings, Rick? If you feel that, I think a lot of your projects have passed maybe some of that, or maybe not. And if, I mean, we certainly need to color code them right if they're missing.
No, that's a good question that I can't answer right now. And I'm not sure Carly can answer that right now either. Carly?
No, Rick, I think we just need to just go back in and go through that together, you and I.
Agreed.
I think if I remember correctly, the assumption was that they are actually fast forwarded to those, you see the screen to the right of the mid-process checkpoint, that those are the activities that need to be happening for the Group 2 Tier 1 projects. And those can be, even that they're over to the right side, those are eligible to be included in the next grant round. That's, I think, if I remember correctly.
Okay. We'll have to look into that, Gail.
Yeah, and this kind of feeds into my bigger question about this, which is I'm glad we went through this exercise and we've got this list, but I remember that when we the board directed the staff to do this, as we said, a priority list. And I think that the idea was that we would be aiming towards what projects we might include in this proposal we're putting together in autumn, because we need to get our act together to figure that out. And obviously, a lot of these projects, for example, the wastewater recharge in Scotts Valley or the ASR projects, these are huge projects that cost many tens of millions of dollars. So these are not things that are going to be included in this relatively small $7 to $8 million grant that we're looking at in autumn. And so I guess what I would just like to see is a little bit more, or maybe it's the thing that should happen next, but is what are the specific steps that we're taking? And I guess one of the things that I've discussed with our staff is that I would really hope that in this 7 to 8 million that we have, that one of the things that we would do is start to do feasibility studies of doing ASR in the Lompico. And even though we, San Lorenzo Valley, are not planning to do this, I think it's an important thing for us to work on, but we really want to begin the process to see what are the potential hazards of trying to do ASR in a consolidated reservoir like the Lompico is. And so I just would say that, even though we're not doing it, I'm really advocating that we make this step, that we go ahead and start to do these tests, both hydrologic modeling, and so that, because right now we keep talking about this, that this is something we want to do, but we haven't taken the first steps to even see that whether it's feasible or it's right to do it in the Lompico. And I think this is, I just want to say, and so that's why I want more granularity. We're not going to do the whole ASR project in this next grant. So I would like to see what's going to happen in the shorter term. And that also plays into the SLV things that have to do with conjunctive use. That there are some things that could be covered. For example, now we have to do a full EIR on conjunctive use, and maybe that could be covered in the grant. And there might be other things as well. But
I think you're having exactly right thinking, and those are the light green cells that we are hoping we can include in the next round of grant application, because that's what I'm seeing here is hydraulic modeling for ASR and IPR, preliminary environmental analysis for the conjunctive use. I think those are exactly the type of things we're hoping we can include them all and get them done all, because then we are more accurately able to evaluate which of those projects should be implemented, because more exploratory activities are done.
Well, okay, then that just brings up my question of why there's nothing from San Lorenzo Valley.
I think I think that's all done. It doesn't need, you don't need those things. I think you go fast forward to the right of them where the light bars are for your projects.
Well, I don't think that that's true for the Loch Lomond. I don't think it's true for the EIR study. I think there's a number of things that we would want to be funded or potentially funded in this grant coming up this autumn. And so that's to say that we're on the other side of that mid-process checkpoint, I don't think is quite correct.
So let me just kind of walk through that line where make sure we're on the same page. So we're talking about the accessing Loch Lomond, that is second grouping. The preliminary feasibility studies is completed. That's a dark green. The next is how hydraulic modeling. That does not need to happen for the Loch Lomond. Groundwater modeling does not need to happen for Loch Lomond. Right-of-way definition does not need to happen. And then water availability analysis is done. And then
correct. What isn't done is an engineering study for if you decide to put in a pipeline. And that would be something that would be included. The level of planning that was done for accessing Loch Lomond was some time ago and is certainly not up to date. So
Right.
I don't
that's an
want to get into a big debate about this right now. All I'm saying is I just want to make sure that the staff go back and with some granularity, make sure that we're talking about what things will be specifically in this proposal that is coming out. I think that for whatever reason, stuff for San Lorenzo Valley has been left out.
And this is not final. This is just something that we came up with. There's some column that is missing that needs to be added. That's definitely the time when we need to be doing that, looking for those activities we could be adding. So absolutely, it's there. You know, it's the kind of starting point, and anything that's missing, we should be adding.
Yeah, staff will regroup, SOV staff will regroup and come back.
Sierra, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I think Perrette mostly covered my comments. I was just wanting to make sure that everybody understood the information that was being conveyed in the table, and maybe we should have done kind of a walkthrough of it a little bit more. But the idea is that everything in the light green squares are things that we think could be bundled together for this first round of application for funding. And so it sounds like what's actually missing in the SLV area, you know, you mentioned the EIR, that's, we already put that, the light green there under environmental analysis. But what we probably missed was the pre-design reports and the preliminary designs. I think that's what we missed here. But in terms of the other top things that you brought up, everything in the light green is something that staff has preliminarily thought would be eligible for this first round of grant funding. And we'll certainly, any feedback that we hear tonight, we can bring back to the group and make sure that we didn't miss anything.
Okay. Ruth.
I'm comfortable with this approach in the short term, but I'm not ready to sign off and say that each agency is going to be the sole funder, or the two agencies are going to be the sole funders of the projects. I'd like to leave it a little bit more open, because there's got to be some equitability in this. And if there's a project that benefits all of the agencies, then I think all of the agencies should be paying in proportion to the benefit they get. So I just don't want to commit now to that part of things, but in the short term of the development of planning, I like it.
Okay. Any other comments by members of the board? How about members of the public? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff. I didn't see you with the hand.
I just raised it just now. Yeah, you were mentioning that you were interested in possibly doing modeling of injection, and didn't we have that done as part of one of our model studies that we've already had done? And the one you're asking for might differ slightly from the one that we had done. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
I think that the modeling that we did was assuming you could get a certain amount of water into the ground, what it would do to the groundwater levels. Okay, but what the question is I can find no published reports on people doing ASR in consolidated aquifers. They're usually in partially consolidated or unconsolidated aquifers. So the question of actually being able to get the water in and then you get it out. But the other thing you have to do is, if you're putting it into a consolidated aquifer, you have to worry about hydrofracking. You have to also worry about, especially because this is deeper, you're putting water that has a different pH and EH into the ground. So there has to be geochemical modeling of what might happen, because you can release arsenic, chrome, uranium. So there's a lot of modeling that has to be done, and potentially, you know, whether we do it now, but benchtop things where you would actually do experiments on pieces of the Lompico to actually then, the next step would be, tests in the ground where you would actually see how much water can you stick in, how much water can you get out, what it does to groundwater levels. In some places you have the potential, if you can't get the water in fast enough, or let's put it this way, you can get it in, but if it doesn't migrate away, you have the potential of raising groundwater levels and actually, causing problems that way with raising the groundwater levels. So that's what I'm talking about. The modeling that we did in the GSP is much more limited. It was basically to do like, what happens if we can get this much water in, what will it do with the climate sort of thing. So the kinds of modeling I'm talking about have not been done. And maybe, there's been some work towards this with Purissima that Santa Cruz has done and the Bretts wells. But that's a different formation than the Lompico. And so that's what I'm saying, is just from the standpoint of this hasn't really been done in consolidated, or at least I can't find papers on it in the primary literature. And I called up my hydrology friends at Stanford and they don't know of any either. Rosemary.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that that I agree with you 100% about what the work that needs to be done, and it's very stepwise. And what's happened as we've developed this project that we're working on in the Mid-County Groundwater Basin is very much a start with paper work, looking at hydrogeochemical modeling, taking samples, doing analysis, siting studies, looking at the appropriate, where the stratas are under where pieces of property are that you could put a well in, and then very much stepwise pilot testing when you figure out where you are in that process. And I think it's extremely important, and you'll see that there's a column in that table talking about hydrogeochemical modeling. Also, there's a column in that table talking about surface water, groundwater compatibility and interactions that are not so much underground, but have to do with in the system. Is another example of the kinds of wanting to make sure you're protecting the water quality from corrosion effects of changing water sources back and forth. These are things that we worked with Soquel Creek Water District on and have quite a bit of result. I think that it's part of this set of materials. There's a fairly long list of studies and results that have been produced, that are available publicly, have been publicly presented in a variety of different formats. But I just wanted to say that I agree with you about the work that needs to be done. And certainly there is no intention of just sort of popping in a well and let's start, putting water in the ground and learn from a bad experience, right? It's a very sequential, stepwise process. And I think one other issue that exists in the Santa Margarita, as opposed to in the Mid-County, we had a way to get water to the wells, treated drinking water to a well. In the Mid-County, we had facilities we could retrofit with injection, so they could be injection and extraction wells. We don't have that, either a water source or a way to get the water from, whether it's Kirby or whether it's the city's water, to a place where we would do it. So there's a bunch of work that has to be done. And I think it's very important that we do this in a very responsible and informed way based on data and analysis. And it takes a while to get that done. So definitely part of how we proceeded before, and how any work in the Santa Margarita, whether the water stored is surface water or it's advanced treated recycled water, to test out to see, does this work here?
I think we're in agreement, and I'm just weighing in, saying that even though we're not doing it, we care about it. And we care about it in part because we share the Lompico aquifer, and so we don't want anybody having their or for that matter, so does Mount Herman. So we want to make sure that anything we do doesn't harm anything. Right. So I just hope that we definitely fund some of that in this initial grant to get it started. Okay, any other comments or questions, discussion? All right, Okay, so I guess, what's next on the agenda? Let's see, we have no administrative activities. There are some staff reports, which the most interesting one was the executive order. And I hope that the board members did look at it, but it definitely does give Santa Margarita and other GSAs more authority to look at activities. And that's why I think Perrette brought it up, that, for example, the big production well that Scotts Valley wants to build would fall under this. On the other hand, the interesting thing was the de minimis users are not subject to this. So our private well owners don't really have to worry about it. Are there any comments on that or the financial report?
Ruth has a hand up. Bill?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, am I ready to go? Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to see more detail in that report in the future. It seems like there were payments to Aqua JPIA. I didn't understand why we're having so many of them, and they were
Executive order, is we on? That's what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the
Financial reports, okay.
Yeah. I'd just like to have more detail on the payments and why they were paid. It seems like we used to have a bit more detail.
Okay.
And 1 month seemed to have a lot more detail than some of the other months.
Okay, I think we do have Nick Kearns here, our treasurer, who produces those reports. So it is a little bit of, again, this is something that in the future, this board needs to be mindful of, all those billable hours by somebody. So if you want, those are canned reports that come out of QuickBooks. If we want staff to be adding things, they will take more time, but I will certainly, I think Nick can hear, and we will see what can be done with reports.
The next item is director's reports. Is there anything, any director have anything to report? Jamie.
I just wanted to say that I had the opportunity to attend a tour that Sierra Ryan was among the participants. I think Chris Berry was the other co-leader of the tour. It was a great opportunity for me to get more familiar with the San Lorenzo Valley watershed. So I really appreciated it from that perspective, but we learned a lot about our fisheries. And I'm really excited to get that, the opportunity to use that testing station in Felton. So I'm hoping that, Sierra, you'll let us know if we do have a rain event that allows us to get some testing data there. But that was really a great tour, and I congratulate you and thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you. Yeah, the county region was host to the Salmonid Restoration Federation conference last week, and we got to host a number of tours kind of throughout the tour period as well as the conference itself.
Okay. All right. Any other director reports? If not, we must be coming up on the end. What's after director's reports, Perrette? Okay, we have this list of future items and then informational items.
So our annual report got submitted. So that's just for your information here. I think we are at number 10, adjournment, right?
Yeah. So unless I hear an objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
And we are at 7:33.
Okay, good night, all.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
4.5, how wonderful. That's just